I, 66-year-old female, have 2 children, Benjamin, 36-year-old male, and Jack, 33-year-old male. Jack is in a good place in his life. He has a good job with a senior position in his industry, a long-term fiancée, a wide circle of friends, and while they're still renting, they're both currently saving for a house deposit. Benji, on the other hand, despite being the oldest, has not done as well in life. Benji has never had a girlfriend or a boyfriend and has no friends that he visits. He did give university a try but left both times in his first year due to anxiety. Today he chooses not to work. Benji and I have been living alone together for the last 6 years now, and I support him financially. I know that the situation is not ideal. However, I've long since come to terms with the fact that Benji is a square peg trying to fit into a world of round holes, and as I'm getting older, I'm happy for his company. It's an arrangement that suits us both. I'm starting to get on in years, and recently my thoughts have turned to my children and what they will do after I'm gone. A few months ago, I decided to update my will and asked Jack for a meeting to address the changes. I let him know that in my updated will, almost all of my assets, both cash and property, will be going to Benji. However, I'll be giving him a cash amount to help with his house deposit, $10,000. My reasoning for this is that I know full well Jack is capable of looking after himself after I'm gone, but without assistance, Benji will always struggle. He is simply never going to have what Jack has. Jack did not take kindly to the news. He said that I'm effectively punishing him for having succeeded in life, where his brother has been allowed to not try and fail his entire life, and is now being rewarded for choosing to remain a NEET so he can suckle on mummy's teat. He said some more unkind things about his brother, and at that stage I said that it was better that he leave until he could calm himself down. On the way out the door, he told me that this was not about money or assets, but was yet another instance of me favouring and coddling Benji the way I have done his entire life. Not true. And claimed we were in an emotionally incestuous relationship. I told him to get out. This all went down 3 months ago, and since then Jack will no longer accept my calls. He ignored my 66th birthday outright, not even a card, and at this stage I am not expecting to see him at all for Christmas, so it's going to be just me and Benji as usual. Other family members have since become aware of the drama and are telling me that my decision is wrong and that by doing this I am driving a wedge further between Jack and Benji when their relationship is already strained. Am I the jerk for my decision? I love both my children equally, but I can't go to my grave knowing that Benji will be out on the streets suffering without me. I know that Jack will never have to struggle in the same way Benji has, so I don't know why he even needs the money in the first place. I am frankly disgusted by his greed and lack of concern for his brother's future. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You're the idiot. Complete a hole. You can't give one child more because the other became self-sufficient. You picked a favourite. That's how your son Jack feels. What makes you think Benji will make good choices after you pass, just because you gave him everything? Comment 2. You're the idiot. Jack is totally right. Jack didn't become successful magically. He worked hard for it. It's not his fault that his brother couldn't achieve anything of his own. You're not realizing it, but you are indeed favoring Benji over Jack. Now for the update. Thanks for all the comments on my last post. It's been a tough few days, and I've had a lot to think about. The day after I posted, I tried reaching out to Jack again, hoping he'd cooled off and we could talk. No luck. He didn't answer my calls, and my texts went unread. I felt like I was hitting a brick wall, and it was painful to think my relationship with my son might be damaged beyond repair. Benji noticed I was upset and asked what was wrong. I didn't want to burden him with the details, but he could tell something was off. He's always been sensitive to my moods. I just told him I missed his brother, and he nodded, looking down at his hands. I think he feels guilty, like this is all his fault, but I've never blamed him for the way things are. A week later, I got a surprise visit from Jack's fiancée. She came alone, and it was clear she was here as a mediator. She told me Jack was still hurt but didn't want to cut ties completely. She suggested we try family therapy, something I hadn't considered before. I agreed, thinking it might help mend things between us. The first session was rough. Jack was there, arms crossed, a scowl on his face. Benji was quiet, almost shrinking into his chair. The therapist tried to get us to open up, to talk about our feelings and the will. Jack let it all out, saying he felt like I never trusted him to take care of his brother, that I always saw him as the capable one who didn't need help or attention. I tried to explain my reasoning, but it just made things worse. Jack said he didn't need my money, but it was about feeling valued and loved equally. Benji spoke up then, surprising us all. He said he didn't want the money if it meant losing his brother. That moment, it felt like we might actually get through this. But things didn't improve much after that. We had a few more sessions, and while the shouting lessened, the tension remained. Jack was polite but distant, and Benji was trying too hard to make things right, offering to move out, get a job, anything to fix the family. Then 2 days ago I got a call from Jack. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking and had come to a decision. He was going to move away, take a job offer in another state. He said it wasn't just about the will anymore, but about needing space to build his own life without the family drama. I was devastated. I tried to talk him out of it, but his mind was made up. He said he'd keep in touch, but I could hear in his voice that things would never be the same. He was pulling away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Benji was heartbroken when I told him. He blamed himself, saying if he'd just been more like Jack, none of this would have happened. I tried to comfort him, but my own heart was aching too much to be much help. Yesterday, Jack came by to say goodbye. It was the most civil we'd been in months. He hugged Benji, who was trying so hard not to cry, and then he hugged me. He whispered that he loved me, but he needed to do this for himself. I watched him drive away, and it felt like a piece of my heart was leaving with him. Now it's just me and Benji again, and the house feels emptier than ever. I keep thinking about what I could have done differently, how I could have prevented all this. But in the end, I know my sons are their own people, with their own paths to follow. I'm left with the sad resolution that sometimes, despite our best intentions, we can't keep our loved ones close. We can only love them and hope they find their way back to us in the end. It's a hard lesson to learn, and one I never wanted to face. But here I am facing it head on, with only memories and what-ifs to keep me company. Now for the comments. Comment 1. Hey there, I can see you're in a tough spot, but have you considered setting up a trust for Benjamin with conditions that might encourage him to seek independence? It might be a good middle ground. Also, have you thought about how this might affect your relationship with Jack in the long run? Comment 2. It sounds like a difficult situation. Maybe you could look into a mediator to help facilitate a conversation between you and Jack. It's important to address his feelings and the family dynamics before it's too late. Sometimes an outside perspective can really help clear the air. Now, for the next story. I, 31-year-old female, am married to James, 35-year-old male, and we have a 3.5-year-old son together. James also has 2 children, Grace, 13-year-old female, and Luke, 14-year-old male, with his ex-wife Sharon, 36-year-old female. Sharon and James have been divorced for 12 years, and ever since Sharon has been in a string of relationships and had 4 additional children who are ages 10 and under. She is currently married and has 3 stepchildren who are 7 and under. James has always been willing to help Sharon out if needed, so the kids can see them getting along and so they know he always does his best for them and their mum. But now he wants me to go a step further than he ever has, and he wants me to babysit all of Sharon's kids, since I'm a stay-at-home mum technically. But I do run my own online business to earn money, and am able to do that around everything else in my life. He said Sharon is struggling to find childcare for all the children she has, and her husband is a bit of a deadbeat. I found out after that Grace asked her dad to help out because she was worried about her mum. I told James that was too much for me. He said he would help where he could and I wouldn't need to worry about the money side because he would take care of it. I told him that's a lot though, and honestly too overwhelming for me. He was frustrated with me, and I told him I didn't appreciate the pressure he was putting on me. Later, Sharon calls and tells me she wants to start dropping off the kids after Christmas. I told her I hadn't agreed. She told me James had told her I would do it. She then told me that I should be willing to help out, and it would win the kids over, Grace and Luke, to me and maybe even to my son, their half-brother. I told James he had no right to promise anything on my behalf. He told me he believed I would be on board, and he was surprised I was so against it when I never had a problem with him helping. Then he asked me to give him a reason that couldn't be helped with getting someone in to help me take care of the kids. I told him he can just pay for people then, if he's so determined, but I won't be babysitting. I also told him we need marriage counselling because of this. Also, and this might be meaningless but I feel I should confess it here, another reason I am unwilling, even if it wasn't so much hard work, is the fact Grace and Luke have never shown an interest in my son. But they're half-siblings from their mum and step-siblings from her. It's totally different. I think it's because they consider all of them, even the steps, their mum's kids. But with my son, he's mine, and not as much their dad's. They are not fond of me or of their mum's husband. It's something I have been working on. But I admit the idea of having all the kids, and as my son gets a bit older, him watching his 2 siblings treat their other siblings so much better, makes me say no anyway. Anyway, Sharon is calling me and saying I am not thinking of my stepkids. James thinks I should have been willing to work with him to figure out a compromise. Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I'm trying to do the math here. She has 6 biological kids, 4 under 10, and 3 stepchildren. So he wants you to watch 7 additional kids during the day? I'd say no for the sheer chaos that would cause. Also, you work. Stop calling yourself a stay-at-home mum. You work from home with a flexible schedule and keep reminding your husband of that. Comment 2. Not the jerk. I'm a guy, and I'm honestly going to tell you, your husband has agreed to this because he knows he won't be the one doing the main heavy lifting of all these kids, apart from throwing money at it. He will only do the absolute bare minimum of anything to do with all those kids. I guarantee you. Now for the update. So, it's been a crazy couple of weeks since my last post. I never expected things to turn out the way they did, but here we are. After the whole babysitting debacle, things got pretty tense at home. James and I were barely talking, and when we did, it was like walking on eggshells. I was feeling pretty alone in all this, and I guess it showed because Grace and Luke started to act differently around me. One evening, Grace came to me and apologized. She said she didn't realize how much pressure her request would put on me and that she just wanted to help her mum. That conversation was a turning point. We talked about how her brother and she felt about my son, and she admitted they had been standoffish because they didn't know how to include him in their already complicated family dynamic. It was a heartfelt moment, and it made me realize that these kids were just trying to navigate a situation that was as complex for them as it was for me. James and I finally sat down for a real talk. I told him how unsupported I felt when he volunteered me for babysitting duty without asking. He admitted he was wrong to assume and apologized. We agreed that we needed to communicate better and that our family needed to work as a team. We also decided to start marriage counseling, which has been incredibly helpful in understanding each other's perspectives. Meanwhile, Sharon's situation hadn't improved, and despite our differences, I couldn't help but feel for her. So I came up with a plan. I reached out to some local parents and organized a childcare co-op. A few days a week, we'd take turns watching each other's kids. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it gave Sharon the break she needed without putting all the responsibility on me. The co-op turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Not only did it help with Sharon's kids, but it also brought our blended family closer. Grace and Luke started spending more time with my son, and I could see a genuine bond forming between them. They even started calling him their little brother, which melted my heart. Sharon and I had a long overdue conversation. It was awkward at first, but we both acknowledged that we needed to work together for the kids' sake. We set some boundaries and agreed to communicate more openly. Surprisingly, we found common ground in our shared love for the children, and a mutual respect began to develop. James stepped up in ways I hadn't expected. He took on more responsibility with the kids, giving me time to focus on my online business, which was thriving thanks to the newfound balance at home. He also made an effort to include my son in activities with Grace and Luke, making sure he felt like a full member of the family. The kids from the co-op and our blended family started to form their own little community. It was amazing to see them all playing together, regardless of whose kids they were. My son was no longer the odd one out. He was right in the middle of the chaos, laughing and playing like he belonged. As for the marriage counselling, it's been a game changer. James and I learned to navigate our blended family dynamics with more empathy and understanding. We're not perfect, but we're a team now, and that's made all the difference. In the end, what seemed like an impossible situation turned out to be an opportunity for growth. Our family isn't just surviving, we're thriving. And while I can't say what the future holds, I know we'll face it together as a united, if unconventional, family. Now for the comments. Comment 1. Oh boy, this takes me back. My ex used to volunteer me for his family events without asking. It's super frustrating. You're not a mind reader and he shouldn't assume you're available. Good on you for standing your ground and pushing for counselling. It's a game changer for communication. Comment 2. Have you thought about setting up a family calendar? It might help prevent these mix-ups in the future. Everyone can add their commitments and nothing gets promised without everyone's agreement. Plus, it's a visual reminder for James that your time is valuable too. Now, for the next story. My younger brother, who is 22 years old, developed a neurological disorder in his teens. When he reached adulthood, he became my responsibility. He seems just like everyone else, but he needs supervision, and it would be very difficult for him to live alone. My husband knew this when we started dating. I've told him 1,000,000,000 times that my brother will always be my priority. He understood. My husband and my brother's relationship has been decent. My brother doesn't care for him much, and my husband treated him kindly. Like I said, he was quite understanding. Things started to change a couple of months ago. He's not mean, but he has become distant. I asked him if everything was all right, and he asked me if my brother would ever move out. I told him the truth, most likely no. Of course, we don't know what the future may hold, but my brother still needs me at this moment in time. My husband didn't push it. The other day, my husband came home with a few of his co-workers. I was given no warning. I tried calling my brother so he wouldn't be overwhelmed when he came home from his job, but his phone was dead. So when he did come home, he was extremely overwhelmed, and I had to take him on a walk. My husband called me several times while we were out on this walk, but I didn't answer. Honestly, I was a little annoyed, but mostly I was busy with my brother. We went home eventually, and his co-workers had left, thankfully. I was just going to let it go, but my husband yelled at me for embarrassing him in front of his co-workers. I asked him what he meant by that, and he explained that I had a bad attitude with everyone and was very inhospitable. He said I didn't act like his wife, and one of his co-workers made fun of my husband for marrying a poor excuse of a woman. Edit. By this he meant cook for them and entertain them. Keep in mind, had he given me a warning, I would have done so with no complaints. But was I supposed to read his mind? I told him to snap out of it, and he should know better. My husband rolled his eyes and told me that I only have my brother in my head and that he's just a second thought. He then called my brother the R slur. This made me extremely angry, so I told him that there's no use getting mad at me. He married me knowing that he'll always be second. He called me insufferable before leaving. Now he's with his mum, and she yelled at me for coddling my brother and neglecting my husband. I'm curious and need to let off steam. Am I the idiot? Edit. Just in case anyone gets the wrong idea, my husband isn't involved in my brother's care, like at all. Not even financially. I wouldn't put that burden on him. He did go to a few therapy sessions just to understand my brother's disability, but that's it. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. So your brother can work independently but not live independently. What will happen if you pass before him or get sick? Did you never go on holiday? Do you see children in your future? But most importantly, does your brother really need you, or have you created an unnecessary codependency that actually hampers his chance at independence? Comment 2. You shouldn't have gotten married. You should also never get married. You are not marriageable. I'm loath to say no idiots here or everyone sucks here, because your husband should not have called your brother the R word, and doing so is really bad. Now, for the update. So, it's been 3 days since my last post, and let me tell you, it's been a ride. After my husband stormed out and went to his mum's place, I was left to simmer in a mix of anger and confusion. I mean, I knew things were tense, but I didn't expect them to blow up like that. The first night was the hardest. I couldn't sleep, kept replaying the argument in my head, and my brother could sense something was off. He kept asking if everything was okay, and I did my best to reassure him, but I'm pretty sure he didn't buy it. I felt guilty for bringing that kind of energy into our home. The next morning I woke up to a text from my husband. He wanted to talk. I agreed, but I was adamant about doing it in a neutral place. We met at a nearby park, a place where we'd had picnics and good memories. It felt like the right spot to clear the air. We sat on a bench awkwardly at first. He apologized for what he said about my brother. He admitted he was out of line and let his frustration get the better of him. I could tell he was sincere, but the words still stung. I explained how important my brother is to me and that his words hurt deeply. We talked about his feelings of being second. He confessed that he sometimes felt like he was competing with my brother for my attention, which wasn't fair to any of us. I got it. I really did. I love my husband, and I never wanted him to feel like he wasn't a priority too. We decided to set some boundaries and work on communication. No more surprise visits from co-workers, and he promised to be more understanding about my brother's needs. I agreed to be more mindful of his feelings and to make sure we had our quality time together. That evening we went home together. It was quiet, but not the uncomfortable kind of quiet. More like the, we've got stuff to work out, but we're in this together kind. My brother was relieved to see us talking again. He's not big on conflict, and I think he blames himself when things go wrong, even though it's not his fault. Yesterday my husband suggested we all go out for dinner, his treat. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. We went to my brother's favourite place, and for a couple of hours it felt like old times. My husband made an effort to chat with my brother, and I could see he was trying to mend fences. On the way back, my brother, who's usually not one for many words, told me he was glad my husband and I were okay. He said he didn't like it when we fought. It was a reminder of how much he notices and how sensitive he is to the dynamics around him. Today, things are looking up. My husband and I are talking more, and we're planning to start couples therapy. We both agree that we need a professional to help us navigate our unique situation. It's not going to be easy, but I'm hopeful. As for my brother, he's back to his routine, and I think he's happy that the tension has eased. I'm making sure to spend time with both of them, separately and together. It's a balancing act, but one I'm committed to getting right. So, am I content? I wouldn't say I'm there yet, but I'm feeling hopeful. We've got a plan, and we're working on it together. It's not perfect, but it's progress. And sometimes that's all you can ask for. Now for the comments. Comment 1. Oh boy, does this take me back. My cousin has autism, and I remember my ex being all sweet and understanding until it got inconvenient for him. You're not the jerk for prioritizing your brother's needs, especially when your husband knows the score. It's about respect, and your hubby dropped the ball big time. Comment 2. All right, Dr. Love here with a prescription of humour and heart. Your hubby's got the emotional range of a teaspoon if he's competing with your brother for attention. Good on you for standing your ground. Therapy's a great start. Think of it as couples boot camp. Here's to hoping he learns to march to the beat of compassion and understanding. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.